What's good, family? I'm blessed to be your host, Caleb Smith. Man, today a very historical moment happened. As you guys know, as you guys have probably already tuned in and seen on social media, Joe Biden has officially dropped out of the 2024 presidential electoral race. And I think that this moment defines so much, man. It defines so much. And I had to pull up to the studio. And this year I vowed that our platform, we're going to talk, as you guys see clearly throughout the past 12 months, talk even more heavily about Black history and now with news, because I think that a major thing and a major component that's missing for my generation and just our people is getting good news, good opinions, and good resources. So that's what we're about to tackle today during this conversation. Man, I'm just chilling. It's a beautiful Sunday here in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm relaxing. We had a long day at the studio yesterday. And right when I sit down, I'm just cooling, enjoying the Sunday vibes. I see that Joe Biden had just dropped out of the presidential electoral race. And I saw this via Complex from scrolling on Instagram. Then immediately I go to all the news sources. I'm on YouTube. I'm watching the news on ABC, World News. I'm watching CBS, CNN, MSNBC, the Fox News. You got to get different perspectives from everybody. And from being in the moment and seeing what was going on, I was just like, yo, this is crazy because I knew that something was up. Immediately when Joe and his team were saying that he had got COVID, right after that Speedy interview on Complex, and then just from seeing like from the presidential race as well of what was going on, it wasn't looking good. And I know during this time, so many of our elders and sometimes they'll try to talk about our generation, Gen Z, millennials of, oh, you guys don't vote or you guys don't care. I think our generation cares just as much as the generation before. I think our generation cares just as much as in the 60s as well. But I think what has happened is our age group, our generation has clearly said that we had enough. We have had enough of not having viable options, not having good choices, of taking a step back and saying, dang, okay, I can analyze properly Trump. I can then analyze President Joe Biden and say, I don't like either option. And just because I say I don't like either option, that doesn't make me a Republican. That doesn't make me a Democrat. It doesn't make me a non voter. It's me expressing my voice as an American and saying, I do not like the options that's being presented towards us. I think that the major disconnect that has happened over the years, rather, is that when it comes to our grandparents' generation, they just want to be comfortable. And I'm not saying that in a very disrespectful manner, and our parents' generation as well. I would include them in that lap. And I wouldn't say that in a sense of that they are irresponsible or that they are coons, if you will, and that they aren't political savvy. No, I think that each generation has different standards, which is why we have new generations in life to push the baton forward, which is perfectly fine. But I think it has gotten dangerous because the the overall Democratic Party hasn't pushed the baton forward. They haven't allowed new, fresh young blood to come into the game and to exemplify what new ideas look like. And I think the young black children, the young black generations across the world, specifically here in America, we have not liked what's been going on. We have not liked what we've been seeing. And as a result of that, I think this is what has caused Joe Biden to step down. Of course, health that plays a factor. But the Democratic Party behind closed doors, they have seen, they have analyzed that we do not rock with what's going on, that we aren't excited about what's going on. So if we even take a step back and look at 2008, that younger generation, which is now in the mid 30s, early 40s, some mid 40s to early 50s, they were excited about President Obama. I was in the sixth grade during that time. I'm 27 years old. I just turned 27 back in January. I was in the sixth grade. However, during that time, we were extremely excited about what was going on because you're talking about the first black president, his policies, everybody's excited. But now what has happened as a result of that, years later, is that people are exhausted by the same political process because there's no new ideas being presented. There's no tangible solutions being presented. And because of that, people are tired, specifically the Black younger population. This was brewing even back in 2020, even back in 2016, towards the end of Obama's tenure. Of we were tired. We were tired. We did not like what was going on. We're tired of gradualism, of saying, well, just vote for the lesser of two evils. No, that's not going to get it done. But see, what the problem is, people then try to fearmonger us by saying, hey, Project 2025, that's something that's going to implement. That's something that's going to happen. Sure, I get that sentiment. Taraji P. Henson, seeing her on the BET Awards talking about Project 2025, and this is what's going on. Yes, Taraji, I hear you. Yes, Project 2025. I see everybody posting about it on social media, but can we have a real conversation? If we're being honest, we're being real. When we talk about Project 2025 and we look at those things that's going to be happening, whether people talk about governmental issues or people talk about critical race theory, reproductive rights for women, all of these things are very poignant issues, right? But when you look at the Supreme Court justices, we look at the judges in that system, and we look at the House of Representatives, and we look at the Senate and all these other factions. In my own personal opinion, and I wouldn't even say in my own opinion because it's several people feel this way as well. I know it even for the people who's tuning in. This is America. And what we have to have a real conversation about is Trump was the reaction to President Obama. Caleb, what do you mean by that? I got you. Let me cook. President Obama was our first Black president, which infuriated the traditional white supremacists and even the comfortable white liberals, if you will. By seeing a Black president have a position of power, be in control, the greatest retort to that is to create your own Obama in the white sense, which is President Donald Trump. So then he comes into power. The worst thing that could have happened was Trump did not finish his, or not even finish, but get reelected for that second term. So then they feel like, dang, we got unfinished business because Joe Biden interrupted that process. So by him interrupting that process, we got something for you. We got Project 2025. We got President Trump coming right back into office. And then now he's going to give us another 2 terms, even better. And we're going to go right back to work. And if he can't give us 2 terms, we're going to do him, Vice President Vance, push him forward. And then we're going to keep this process that's going over time. Immediately once this happened, and once I received the news, I called my mom. Shout out to my mom. I called her, and I love having political conversations with older people because I love getting their pulse. Because I know how we feel as younger adults and younger people of being passionate about these issues and wanting to see proper change in our country, our communities. And I want to get the older generation's perspective. Because even before I jump into this conversation that I had with my mom, I want for you guys to study a little bit of history here. People often forget that there was a major disconnect between the elder generation during the civil rights movement and the younger generation during the civil rights movement. Their parents and grandparents felt like that they were causing unnecessary trouble because during their time period, when they were children, you were causing trouble, right? Now, when I say this, I'm not saying from that sentiment of Kanye West, of slavery being a choice and people having this common misnomer that Black Americans during this time period, that we were just submissive and we were just taking these beatings. Of course not. But anytime that we try to say, well, that couldn't be me back during that time period, I couldn't walk with my head down to survive, or I couldn't walk and not look a white person in the eye. I want for you to have that same sentiment when you go to your job tomorrow, when you try to protect your salary, your income, when somebody's complaining or somebody's saying, I quit this job. It's all about perspective and time. So just think about that. It's always about perspective and time. Anytime that we try to judge, anytime that we try to say anything of, oh, that could never be me, it's about perspective and time. Because when you go to work every day or when you're in the classroom, you try to not have too much craziness go on either because you're just trying to survive. You're just trying to make it to the next day. The older generation felt like the younger generation was causing unnecessary trouble. Let's think about Dr. King for a second. It was the same exact thing. Southern pastors felt like he was a troublemaker They felt like he was disrupting the system. They felt like he was making the block hot, right? There's always been that disconnect. And the younger generation is always going to be disruptors because we and they will come in and say things have to change. And that's the only way how things change is off of the younger generation. So before I jump into the conversation with my mom, to finish this point, Daddy King, Dr. King's father, if you look this up, during this was during the time of here in Atlanta, civil rights era of they were protesting Sears, which was Richards at the time. I think Richards was connected to Macy's or something, if I'm not mistaken. Please confirm that. But the young college students were protesting, and Dr. King's father was used to mitigate the situation, make things die down. The younger generation had a major disconnect with him because they're like, "No, we got to push this thing forward." Now, this is where you hear about a Samuel L. Jackson and Morehouse when they were protesting, they shut the school down. Daddy King is also connected to that. But we often forget our history. Samuel Jackson at the time was viewed as a radical. He had the FBI going down on him. He's at Morehouse, and they could have said during that moment, young black man, you're at Morehouse, you got it made. Just be a good Negro. Samuel Jackson said no, and they shut the school down. So the younger generation has always been pushing forward. And Nat Turner was young. Harriet Tubman, like they've always pushed. Let's think about John Horse for a second. So shout out to Miss Denise as well. Check out that interview here on the channel. But they've always pushed forward. So now we've reached another pivotal moment in our society where the younger generation has said that we've had enough. You may not be able to view it directly because it's happened in more of a political realm, but the influence of the younger generation is clearly showing right now. So we have this going on with President Joe Biden. I'll call my mother immediately because I know for all the younger people out there in their 20s and 30s and 40s of we've had the conversations with our parents and grandparents like, hey, I don't think Joe Biden is it. I don't like the Democratic Party, how they're trying to present things to Black Americans or to Black people as a whole, to our whole family as well. And when I say our whole family, I'm talking about the people of the diaspora too. Um, but I don't like how these policies are being presented, and specifically to Black Americans for a second as well, because anytime we have asked, what is your specific agenda for Black America? They always get uncomfortable. They don't mind talking about any other group, but when it comes to talking about specifically about Black Americans, the Democratic Party always gets uncomfortable. But we are your base. We get you guys elected. We get you guys pushed forward. We get you guys flowing. We do this for you guys. But when it's time for us to get some actual tangible solutions, it's crickets. Why is it that? Why is it like that? Why is it always crickets? So I'm talking to my mother and I'm telling her, like, Mom, what do you think about this? And also, I'm not gonna lie, I told her I told you. Because the moment that they said that President Joe Biden came down with COVID, I said this is a cop-out because he's been going out sad. The Speedy interview was terrible. The presidential debate, as you guys know, was terrible. And just from him just doing press conferences and referring to Vice President Harris as Vice President Trump, it's just like thing after thing after thing. And I'm just like, yo, Joe is just digging a further hole and grave for himself, and it's looking bad. And this is the result of that. And my mom, for the first time in a long time, expressed her sentiment of not believing in the Democratic Party. And as you guys know, for especially Black people here in the South, like our parents are loyal to the Democratic Party. And hearing her disdain and disbelief and just disappointment and of them not properly handling this situation, which is so pivotal, especially for this election, she told me that she lost faith. And what has happened, the Democratic Party has ignored the Black American population for so long that it has led to their demise. Caleb, what do you mean by that? I got you. By them ignoring us and not providing us with tangible solutions, by them using us for our votes blindly and showing up to the Black church to tell us to vote for them, but not having actual solutions, by us starting to demand actual solutions and actual changes and then pushing it to the side. And we see the funds going to Israel. We see the funds going to the Ukraine. We see the funds even sometimes going to immigrants who are coming into this country undocumented and going to cities like New York, Chicago, and getting the gift cards and getting the housing. And we see multiple videos of certain places, and I've seen it in Chicago where these are community centers where the kids can't play their sports. They're housing immigrants, and the people are like, dang, but this is the same person I voted for, but you're pushing me out to now take care of another group. But at those other groups, listen, don't attack me because I'm not mad at you. America is an ATM. Get what you can out of this ATM. And it's time for Black Americans to get what we so rightfully deserve out of this ATM as well. You talk about a population that has literally built this country. You talk about a population, when I hear certain people say that Black Americans are immigrants, they are factually wrong. Where's the proof? I highly advise for people to check out the interview I did with Chief Sekou of the Yamasi tribe. Chief Sekou Hajo Gentle, amazing brother. Check out that interview. Denise Vasquez Welch on the channel. Check out that interview. The great descendant of Juana, who is the sister of John Horse. I advise for people to check out great brothers like Turtle Gang, Miles Green. Even Professor James Small has talked about this. Dr. Kaba Kamene, spiritual mentor. Love Dr. Kaba. Our history, we were here before there were any European settlers. I advise for you guys to look up Fort Columbus, Dr. Ivan Van Sertima, and there's so many other great resources. Black Americans were actually already here before the slave trade, any of this, traveling back and forth, and some and most indigenous to this land already. And even the African brothers and sisters who came here via the slave trade, which did happen, of course. Our blood is implemented in this soil. And what happens is, and never let anybody say this, they try to water down our influence and our ties to this land. And sometimes it's our own people. Our own people would try to Africanize us to the point that we have no connection to this land. And we do have a strong connection to this land. And I don't say it in a sense of United States of America. That is a whole enterprise that was built. I'm talking about before this. Our blood, and even let's talk about even after this whole enterprise was built. Our blood, our generations, our lives, everything is into this soil. And even if you want to start with slavery in 1619, if you want to use the whole 1619 argument, which is wrong, but if you want to use the 1619 argument of that's when we arrived here, if we start with all the infractions that happened since then and look at every other group that's been taken care of or that's been amended or atoned is the word I was looking for, being atoned, it's endless. It's endless. We talk about the internment camps. We talk about the Jewish community, Native Americans. But what about us? Whether you're talking about the inventions, whether you're talking about the railroad systems, whether you're talking about the cotton industry, the tobacco industry, where you're talking about our indigenous roots as well, it goes left and right. And they know it. But what has happened is you can only treat the foundation of this country wrong for so long until it falls. And right now, what is happening is America is falling due to its sins of neglecting Black American community. You cannot neglect the very lifeline that keeps you going as a party, but think that you can still exist and go stronger. You can't replace the blood. You can't replace the lifeline that keeps this train moving. And what has happened is the Democratic Party has become so arrogant into thinking that they can exist without us, that they will no longer exist. Now, I'm not saying it in a way of a civil war, revolutionary things, which is also possible, because that's always in play. But I'm saying this from a standpoint of what has happened is, and what will happen, the Democratic Party will now be cut in half of certain people who want to see Vice President Harris and certain people who don't. I think that exposes a strong level of racism as well. I'm not a strong supporter of Vice President Harris, but what I am a supporter of and seeing is of our people of seeing. So y'all strongly support President Biden, but you don't support the vice president. And why? But this is exposing there's racism in the Democratic Party too. People often think, oh, because they're liberal, because they're more open to ideas and all these other things that, yes, these people are more free flowing. They're more this, that, and that, this, that, and the third, and woke and all these things. No, they aren't. They're actually more dangerous. My brother Malcolm X even spoke about this. These are the same people that will smile in your face, stab you in the back. And they're more dangerous about it because you let your guard down around because you think that they're more welcoming. But in all actuality, it's the complete opposite. And right now, that's being exposed. And what is happening and what is going on is you have not inspired the next generation to the political process. And by you not inspiring them, they don't feel invested to take part in this political process. And when you actually take a step back and think about it, should they be invested in this political process? Should they be excited about what's going on? No. So this is why I had to do this emergency chilling with Caleb because, like what I promised you guys back in January, and I had to hold myself accountable. I will be doing this once a week where we're talking about news, current topics, because this is needed for our generation. And I vow, as being a journalist, that I'm going to provide this for our generation and be a voice because it's needed. And I've seen so many bright young brothers and sisters who are exhausted by this process. And it was a slap in the face. We have somebody like a Joe Biden who's older, who's clearly slurring his words, who's not showing the qualities of a strong leader. And it was arrogant to think that you could push this forward and that we would just go with this. It was very arrogant thinking. When we analyze and look at President Donald Trump, or former President Donald Trump, who what is looking like they just gave him the ticket, basically, the timing was perfect for Donald Trump. He looked strong, whether it looked staged or not, with the assassination attempt just a week ago. President Biden then contracts COVID. Now he announces that he's dropping out of the presidential race. And now you have Donald Trump just lurking in the back. It's like The Wire. Omar's coming. Trump's coming. Omar's coming. Trump's coming. Just looking over the shoulder, like, when's the perfect time to rob y'all? Just like Omar on The Wire, and this is it. I think it was Marlo on The Wire. Said, when you take a shot at the king, you best not miss. And they took a shot at Trump, literally and figuratively, about trying to put him in jail and trying to shoot him and all these things. And it's like he's the last man standing out of the two between him and Biden. And January 6th, ironically, that's my birthday. And Donald Trump, the January 6th insurrection, he flexed his power. Now imagine him back in the seat as president. Now, I'm not one of the fear-mongering people who are afraid of Donald Trump. Honestly, I'm not afraid of him becoming president again. We survived 4 years. I think we can survive more because that's just our people. It doesn't matter who the president is for our people. We have to, this process has exposed one thing. And the reason why I say I'm not afraid because we have no choice. If he becomes president, what are we going to say? We're just going to leave the country or we're just going to run away? We're just going to fold? No, our people didn't fold back then. Our people didn't fold 400 years ago. Our people didn't fold 60 years ago, 80 years ago. So we can't fold now. They gave up too much to be here. For us to be here, for us to be alive. And what are we going to do for our children? But this will go down in history, our generation, because it's on us. And it's not even on us about the state of the country. I'm not worried about that as a Black man in America. I'm worried about our community, our people. How do we protect our people? Dr. Claude Anderson has spoken about this a plethora of times, but I know many of you guys have heard about powernomics. We have to insulate our own community and become our own super PAC, where we say, hey, these are our demands. Ice Cube tried to do it, the contract for Black America. And people said, oh, what are you doing talking to Trump? Moses met with Pharaoh. Dr. King met with Lyndon Baines Johnson, who was an avid racist. But you started talking about 64 Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act and all these things. When you see somebody that you need something from, you got to do business. And it's not about if I like you and if you like me. Joe Biden, do you really think he likes Black people? Honestly, the same man who told you that if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. The same man who told you that he's going to the projects. So that's part of his black outreach. Kamala Harris, who told you that I'm not going to do something just solely for black people. They don't, the Democratic Party doesn't care about you either. Now, I'm not saying vote red, Republican, no, but what I am saying is that we have to open up our minds and understand that this is a capitalistic society and that we have to start thinking in a sense of what can we get for our people, even if we don't vote for Donald Trump. I'm talking about, let's say Trump becomes president, which is most likely. When it's time to get things done, we can't say that we can't meet with Trump, who's an avid racist, of course. But what I'm saying is we can't put ourselves outside of the political arena just because we don't like who's in. Because devil's advocate, is that not democracy? Don't you think that your favorite person is not going to get elected every single time? And if they do, that's a dictatorship, which is what Trump is trying to push. But I'm just saying all that to say, like, we have to understand that your favorite person isn't going to always get elected. And in the event that they don't get elected, how do we still stay influential in the political arena? We have to get together to start creating super PACs. We have to get together to start creating, as a community, what do we want, and voting with actual tangibles and things that we would like to see happen. And I know Roland Martin and brother Tariq Nasheed don't get along, and I love Tariq. I side with him on a lot of things, but I think that what we really have to start doing, and I know people talk about the black boule, which is a real thing where we have the black upper class who are more comfortable and sometimes who cling and hold on to the garments of the Democratic Party off of things that they can receive. The black upper class now has to come down and talk to the youth who can vote, and talk to the black working class, and get with also the black grassroots movement with people like Tariq Nasheed who have influence and have power. A person like a Roland Martin has to accept the power that a Tariq Nasheed has and say, how can we come together and make this work? All the infighting, all that stuff has to stop. We are at a very pivotal moment to where ego has to go out the door. And what we have to say is, you may not like me, black man, and I may not like you, but I love our people. What can we figure out together with my influence and my infrastructure and your influence and your infrastructure, that we can combine all of these components and create something for our people? I see 19 Keys beefing with Isaac Hayes III. 19 Keys has his stance on things. Isaac Hayes III has his stance on things. In certain arguments, I agree with 19 Keys. In certain arguments, I agree with Isaac Hayes III more. However, how do we say, 19 Keys, you got influence. Isaac Hayes III, I got fan base. How do we combine both of these fractions or factions of what you have and what I have with my infrastructure, with my influence, and combine this to then catapult our community? All the infighting has to stop. We're at a moment right now to where we could be fighting. So imagine how crazy this is and how full circle this is. When we think about what was going on in West Africa or throughout the continent, and what was going on throughout North America and South America, when Europeans start coming into the picture, there was a little bit of infighting going on. Because of that infighting, we can now side with certain ones and divide and conquer. We have to learn from our ancestors' mistakes and show and create a united front. All the fighting has to happen behind closed doors. And when we come outside, the family business is already taken care of. And when we come outside, we have an agenda and we have something that we would love to present. And if they do not meet these X, Y, and Z's, we're on to the next. We have just shown the Democratic Party our power as a people when we aren't fully on board. That's what forced Joe Biden to step down, because they knew that he would not win. You could come up with any other excuse. You could come up with any other idea. They knew that Joe would not win. That's why Joe stepped down. So what do we present as a community, as a people, to where we can get what we so rightfully deserve and what we can get things that tangibly change our communities? How many times have you seen the Asian community outside doing or during a moment of a person in their community that's been harmed, or police brutality, Jewish community, or um, any other community? Not really. You don't really even say or see them say, go out and vote. But you do see them in the financial realm doing amazing. You do see them in the political realm getting tangible solutions. Why? Because they have a united front of, when you show up in this community, I have to check off these boxes for them. But for us, We're just told just to go out and vote. Vote for what? And when I say vote for what, I'm not saying don't vote. I'm literally asking vote for what? What policies would you like to see? Do you know if you're conservative? Do you know if you're liberal? What do you want out of this candidate? And if you don't like that candidate, who is the alternative to that candidate that you might support? This is how we have to start thinking. We have to start raising our children to become more political savvy as well. Of, hey, when you go out and vote, make sure that you like this from this person, or make sure that you want that from that person. That's how we got to start get rewired. That's how we got to start thinking. We can't just be around and just be happy just to be voting. No, that's not enough. That's the bare minimum. Yes, you should be voting, but you should be voting for something, not just voting just to vote and voting blue just because somebody told you to. No, 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 no. I'm voting because I need this out of you. And if I don't get this out of you, you will not begin our vote. And also, how do we start donating and putting money in? Joe also had to step down because you got George Clooney. You talking about a person giving 90 M saying, yo, I'm not rocking with you. Money talks. So how do we start using our money? Dr. Claude Anderson again, our Powernomics. When you see things, right, like Vice President Harris at the BET Awards talking to Taraji P. Henson, talking about, I've been out here in these streets. Pause, stop. This is what I mean. It's so outdated with how you are even presenting and talking to us. When we see get your booty to the poll, no voting, no vucking. Like, what are we talking about? This is how you view us as imbeciles, as people who just want to have sex, smoke weed, party, and we don't care who the president is. Oh, and we're going to market to them by having strippers in the strip club, dancing on poles, and that's what's going to get them to vote. We're not going to talk about the policies that we're going to provide for them. We're not going to talk about the solutions that we want to provide for them. We're not going to even talk about what the future is going to look like for them. But the Republican Party can tell us what the future is going to look like for us with Project 2025. How about that? What does the Democratic Party's Project 2025 look like? That's the problem. They have done a gradual process since the Tea Party, I remember that in the 2000s, and ever since President Obama, of how do we retort everything that's going on right now? And they have executed efficiently. And we've just sat back and watched and said, anybody but Trump. No, we need more. We deserve more. So how do we get more? We got to organize, and we have to understand it's okay to have a voice, and it's okay to stand up to them and tell them what you're not going to have. We got to use our voice, and we have not, and we have got to understand that we cannot get comfortable with just being around. No, that's not enough. We have to gain something. We have to get something out of this, and we have to stand up for ourselves. And just accepting what's going on is not enough anymore. Your ancestors gave up too much for you to be here just to be happy to vote. And the Democratic Party is telling you something. We just have to open up our eyes and ears and even our noses to smell what's going on. Is that by us not being enthusiastic about what's going on, they have been forced to take a step back and say, dang, Joe, right? They had to tap him on the shoulder, say, brother, you got to bounce. So how do we demand more now? How do we get more now? That is what's going on. President Biden also released a statement. I'm about to pull up the statement right now. And I want you guys to make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. So this is from Joseph R. Biden Jr. This is his statement. My fellow Americans, over the past 3.5 years, we have made great progress as a nation. Today, America has the strongest economy in the world. We've made historic investments in rebuilding our nation and lowering prescription drug costs for seniors and in expanding affordable healthcare to a record number of Americans. We've provided critically needed care to 1 million veterans exposed to toxic substances, passed the first gun safety law in 30 years, appointed the first African-American woman to the Supreme Court, and passed the most significant climate legislation in the history of the world. America has never been better positioned to lead than we are today. I don't know about that one. I know none of this could have been done without you, the American people. Together, we overcame a once in a century pandemic and the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. We've protected and preserved our democracy, and we've revitalized and strengthened our alliances around the world. It has been the greatest honor of my life to serve as your president. While it has been my intention to seek re-election. I believe it is in my best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down and focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term. I speak to the nation later this week in more detail about my decision. For now, let me express my deepest gratitude to all those who have worked so hard to see me reelected. I want to thank Vice President Kamala Harris for being an extraordinary partner in all this hard work. And let me express my heartfelt appreciation to the American people for the faith and trust that you have placed in me. I believe today, what I always have, that there is nothing America can't do, and we do it together. We just have to remember that we are the United States of America. All right. So there's a lot to unpack there. Um, with Joe, I get it. I know, of course, Joe didn't write that, but President Biden, it's just like for our generation, when we hear that America is in the greatest position today, but then I'm outside and I see homeless people or unhoused people, right? And I see the condition of our people in other parts of this country. And I see young people my age who have to work two, three jobs just to provide for themselves and for their families. I see people my generation who are having to wait to get married because we can't the same way our parents did because of inflation, because the cost of living, because these jobs aren't paying enough, because there's no real salary jobs out there like that. And that we kind of got to get it on our own out the mud. Like this generation, we have seen some stuff, man. And I think that it's sometimes distasteful when you hear politicians say, or not even politicians, when you hear sometimes from the Democratic Party, oh, this country, we have the strongest economic environment in the world, and da 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 da. We're just like, but we don't see it. Where? Show me. And I'm not saying don't grind and complain. No, get it, work. But I'm saying we have a real conversation. Think about how our parents were able to have homes and get married in their early 20s. You don't really see that going on right now. Think about how our parents were able to start making six figures and work six-figure jobs in their mid to late 20s. You don't see that right now because our parents are still working those jobs. Those jobs aren't available for us. And if they are, it's few in between. So just hearing those things and hearing that sentiment, it's just sometimes unaware. And sometimes we just have to be real and say this the country's not in a good state right now. And even from a political perspective, it's so shaky and unstable. Yes, parties will not agree, but this right here is very unstable. And I think that we are entering a realm of it's become so heightened that if Joe wins, the Republicans will be infuriated and that they will retaliate and that the people who are loyalists, who are everyday people in the world, you start seeing things like mass shootings and these crimes. And then if Joe loses the Democratic Party, you'll get the same type of thing where you have people trying to kill former President Trump. Yes, I get it. They say the shooter was more of a right winger, but still, the environment of kill this man on either party is being brewed where people are genuinely trying to harm the next person, the next candidate. This is the environment that's being created. President Obama also has something to say. He said Joe has never backed down from a fight. For him to look at the political landscape and decide that he should pass the torch to a new nominee is surely one of the toughest in his life. But I know he wouldn't make this decision unless he believed it was right for America. Now, people know President Obama is involved with Netflix, and for Netflix to show their disdain towards President Biden of not supporting him, people kind of figured that President Obama kind of had a hand in that. And some people think Gavin Newsom is next, which I think would be a strong candidate, but people feel like he has skeletons in his closet. Some people feel like Vice President Harris. But with anything that's going on, the biggest lesson that has to be learned in life, whether it's in the Black community and also in the political realm with the Democratic Party, you have to pass the torch. And what has happened is in our lives, and we see this as young Black people, we talk about this all the time. The older generation has a problem with passing the torch off of still trying to maintain control and not understanding that it is a sign of not properly preparing the next generation when the older generation feels like they still have to be in control. And now you're scrambling trying to get things figured out because we didn't have a proper process of grooming and getting the next person ready. And Black Panther, T'Challa's father, And I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but basically had told him on the ancestral plane was that my job as a father would be incomplete and I didn't accomplish my mission if you didn't know how to function without me being here. I have to prepare you for my death. Excuse me. And that's what's going on. Like, how are we preparing the next generation? How are we preparing my generation to lead the next generation after us? If the people are still in positions of power, we see that in the content game, like in the media realm, where certain people, you've seen this same radio host or this same producer or programmer for 30, 40 years. And it's like, you don't know the newest sounds. You don't even know how to run a TikTok page. Why are you in charge? And then you're asking young people to do it for you, but then you're taking the credit. So apparently we can run this thing. And you were in this role when you were my age. So how come I can't do it? So you start seeing these things. So then when it comes to the presidential race, it's the same argument. So I want for us to tear this down in a sense of our thought process of thinking that we aren't ready. Our generation is ready. And we've been expressing that. And now it's up to us when it comes to this presidential race. Now it's up to us when it comes to what does the tangibles, shout out to the FBAs, uh, shout out to people part of the grassroots of, in a sense of what does our tangibles look like, right? And even Dr. Greg Carr and Karen Hunter, if this gets out to them somehow, some way, Karen Hunter, I love Dr. Greg Carr, I love. I disagree with certain sentiments when it comes to their feelings towards foundational Black Americans in the sense of that movement, or the sense of also when it comes to voting for certain people. But I also agree with them in certain things as well. So I say all that to say, of it going back to my point of we don't have to agree on everything because we all have different minds. But what we can agree on, and Dr. Greg Carr and Karen Hunter, they always talk about this, Sonia Sanchez, I think, as well, when they said, how do it free us? And that's a real sentence. How does it free us? And that's how I feel right now. Like we can disagree on so many things, but at the end of the day, our freedom, us having a viable community that's flourishing, that's what's important. I don't have to agree with you on everything. Imagine if Marcus Garvey and W.B. Du Bois, instead of fighting, came together and said, yo, this is how we're going to make this work. Imagine if, and we know that they had conversations. We have pictures of Dr. King sitting down with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and him and Malcolm X. I have the portrait. I usually always have it up here, but today was an emergency session and I just had to hurry up and set up and film real quick. But Dr. King and Martin even talked. But imagine if they combined their movements together at the same exact time and they did the marches together or they did this together. You saw Dr. King at the mosque doing press conferences and you saw Malcolm down here, down the street, right here in Atlanta, right where I'm at, Auburn Avenue, having these conversations. These type of things, this is what I mean about what has to happen right now. We have to present a united front and we got to all come together, not for the Democratic Party, no, for ourselves, because it's about to get real. And I'm not saying this in a sense of when you saw Taraji B. Henson and everybody fear-mongering about Project 2025. No. But what I am saying is we all have to come together strategically right now for the people who vote blue no matter who, for the people who vote red, for the people who are in the middle, and for the people who are independent, and for the people who don't even care and they just want to be full revolutionaries and make their communities thrive. Let's all come together and let's all have conversations in each community, each city, and mobilize and figure out, okay, how can we attack from what you do and from what I do? Because when we look at the white communities and any other communities, that's how you're strong. You need people in different factions. You need people in different avenues. That's what makes you important and that's what makes you influential because you can attack from every standpoint, not just from one. So they can never see us coming. Opposed to, oh, I already know how they're gonna vote. Or I already know how they're gonna think, how they're gonna move. We can't move like that. We cannot move like that. We have to understand that this is a very pivotal time. And right now, white supremacists, white nationalists are what it's looking like about to put everything into effect that they've been planning. But it's up to us to counterattack to what they have going on. So it's up to us. It's up to us. But the Democratic Party has learned a very valuable lesson. Let me pull up also what my man A.R. Shaw had to say, friend of the show. Because me and AR, man, we were just having political conversations, us and the team, and he was here on the pod. AR, he just had to say, this is unbelievable. And I think when you have people who were supporting just to see, like, y'all want to drop this right now, you got the convention next month, you have the reelection and election season happening in November. This was poor handling, but this is what happens when you neglect the people who have supported you. This is what happens when you neglect the people that have been 10 toes down. Our generation is up to us. How are we going to make this thing work? How are we going to mobilize our own communities? And how are we going to get tangible solutions for our people? And also specifically for Black America. And it's okay to say, I want something specifically for Black America. There's no sin in saying that. So it's up to us, y'all, to figure this out, to keep going, and to make something happen for our people. I love y'all so much. I appreciate y'all for always tuning in and supporting. Make sure y'all tap in and watch the latest interview featuring the good brother Miles Green that we had talking about Ohio Valley civilization, the Mississippians. Again, that's to our point about us already being here in the Americas and talking about ancient America. But tap in, man. I appreciate y'all so much. Blessed be your host, Caleb Smith. Thank y'all for this emergency chilling with Caleb. I promise y'all I'm about to do these at least once a week where we're just chopping it up about current events. I want for you guys to comment below your sentiments, how you feel. Do me a favor too. Express how you feel in the comments and also drop your questions that you have about this or about anything that you would like for me to address. So if you have any questions, because I just want to interact with you guys because I love you guys so much. We're at 11,200 subs. We're on the road to hit 12, then 15, then 20. Man, we're doing this independent. I want for you guys to drop any questions that you have in the comments, any concerns, sentiments, and let's just spark this conversation, keep this thing going. Again, I love you guys. Also, if you guys have any other guests that you would like for me to chop it up with, comment that below too. But we're going to keep this conversation going. Thank y'all for tapping in. I had to pull up to the studio today, post this today, get all this up, edit it, everything, because it was time. We had to get this thing going. So I appreciate y'all so much. I love y'all and I thank y'all. Until next time, man, again, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Let's be your host, Caleb Smith. Stay vigilant. Get together. Have those conversations with the elders. Have those conversations with your friends, your family, and get things figured out from a sense of how can we make these things work? This is how we start to get things figured out, y'all. I'm telling you. So we got to mobilize and take things from the older generation and apply it for us, for the younger generation. We use the elders for counsel, and the youth, they're the warriors who go to war. That's how we merge the gap. That's how we make it happen. So I love y'all. Until next time, peace.